I thank my God in all my remembrance of who? Of you. Now look at the next verse, or the rest of the verse. Always in every prayer of mine, for you are making my prayer with joy. Paul was a person that believed in being thankful for a church. Now, what was the Philippian church known for? They were known for being thankful people. They were known for being joyful people, but they were also known, if you read Philippians 4, they were also known as a church that partnered with Paul and literally gave a missional offering to help Paul further the gospel and plant churches all over the world. Now, let me be very clear. How many of you think our missionaries last week were thankful for this church? Understand this, that Paul knew that they were tied with him in his ministry. And when Paul spoke, when Paul prayed, he was thankful for the church. But understand this, your church that you attend today will not always bring thanksgivings in your heart if you're not pointed to think that way. Do you know why? Because every now and then we act like a Corinthian church. I'll charge you in just a moment. Many people have left this church over the years. They have. It's not an elephant in the room, it's actuality. Many people leave many churches over the years. But by far and large, what happens to many people that have left is they focused on something rather than being thankful. Right? They wind up focusing on something rather than being thankful. If you make it a fault-finding mission to find something at fault in this church, guess how long you're going to have to be on a mission? Not very long. Can you imagine turning the unthankful into being thankful? Stopping in the midst of your fault-finding mission and turning those words into thankfulness. Well, what do we have to be thankful for? Can I give you a list of about 87 things this morning? Number one, this church teaches my young children the Scriptures. I'm thankful. This church teaches my youth children the Scriptures. This church leads me into singing and worship. This church encourages me. This church has a baptistry. This church has water to fill the baptistry. This church gives financially to support the kingdom work. This church feeds my family on Wednesday nights because we have people working and serving. This church has people being saved. This church has new people coming and joining the church. This church has babies. This church has people keeping, loving, and holding these babies. This church has children that make messes. This church has money to give to missions all over the world to spread the gospel. This church has a roof on its building. This church has a building. This church has chairs. This church has chairs with cushions. This church has doors where varmints, snakes, lions, and lizards stay on the outside. This church has lights that work and air conditioners sometimes. This church has people that give to keep the lights on. This church has people that pull the weeds out of the flower beds. This church has a playground for the kids. This church has a Blackstone that we can cook food on. This church has a kitchen that works. This church has a kitchen with water in it. This church has a kitchen with some extremely hot water in it. This church has a bathroom. This church has 6 bathrooms. This church has people. This church has senior saints. This church has families. This church has singles. This church has youth. This church has children. This church has babies. This church has Daddy Rabbit. This church has people that say slap. All of these things that God's money was given to where God's people could have a place to go to and worship. Oh, that we thank God for this church.